Thank you so much for having us here, CPAC Budapest. It is an absolute honor to return here again for my second year and be speaking with you.
And you're most welcome, actually, to Hungary, because I believe you have a taste of Central Europe because of your origins, but also because of your marriage. So you have family ties, if you like, to Central Europe.
We just spent, so my family comes from Poland, and we just spent a few days visiting with them in Poland, and we actually have my two little boys are here with us, not in the room, but they're back enjoying Budapest today. So for them, it was their first time being able to visit the actual village where my family comes from in Poland.
Well, as we were listening to this morning's lectures and contributions, we've been trying to warm up ourselves for the discussion, and very obviously we have agreed on a very important thing, because Mr. Posobiec was introduced as a journalist. Let's make that clear that you're not a journalist. You don't consider
I would never use
such
a debased term to refer to myself. I would never insult myself so much to be referred to as a journalist. No, and I'm not criticizing, but when you look at what journalists have become today, not just in Hungary, but across Europe, from Brussels to New York to Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, journalism has become a trade that is completely debased. It has become completely dishonorable. They spread lies, they spread anger, they spread misinformation, while they accuse people like myself, people like the government of Hungary, people like President Trump, people like anyone else, Elon Musk, anyone who's out there telling the truth. They will accuse you of doing that which they are doing themselves every day.
Very much so. And indeed, my introduction started with something that is a kind of a self-inflicted torture that I have to deal with, Joe knows, on a daily basis. But I got to tell you that what comes to my mind is Mr. Burstein. Yes, that Mr. Burstein, the Watergate issue. A couple of years ago at the Jerusalem Press Conference, he basically announced, or kind of admitted in our discussion, that indeed the biggest danger, the biggest challenge for journalism is the journalists themselves. But let's talk about why. And you know, obviously, trying to have a discussion, a conversation for 15 minutes, we were trying to prepare with topics, but those topics have already been overwritten, actually, by the Prime Minister's speech, and I believe all the contributions that we've heard today so far. I had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Babiš, actually on my podcast, on the dangers he sees about the European institutions. We are going to have the opportunity with Mr. Jansa tomorrow, if I'm right, to talk about things like that too. But let's begin with some definitions, and I believe the Prime Minister's new definition of woke cancel culture as a virus carries some potential, actually, on which we can build.
I think he's right about that, because we've seen this in the United States, where the virus, and I would actually refer to it, I do refer to it on my podcast on Human Events Daily and at humanevents.com, where I'm the senior editor. We refer to it as a virus of the mind, a virus of the mind, where you, and as the previous speaker mentioned, it is a virus that affects your view or your ability to understand and interact with reality. And because you reject reality so forcefully, this virus then causes you to act out in ways to support institutions, to support laws, to support false truths in order to try to reform reality into what your warped view of how reality should be. And in this virus, and it does spread because it is contagious, this virus spreads through social media, it spreads through propaganda to children, it spreads through TikTok, it spreads through mainstream media, TV shows, and in many places in the United States where, unfortunately, we do not have a law like the great law in Hungary, which prevents this type of propaganda from being shown to children. And I wish that the United States would follow Hungary's lead and pass the very same law for all United States.
Very well, and I also believe that this new formula the Prime Minister used is going to contribute to our narrative, actually, which obviously the recognition came just couple of months into the first of the four consecutive terms of the Prime Minister back in 2010-11, when obviously the change in the media law has attracted much attention, as a matter of fact, and all the quarrels and skirmishes with the European Commission started back then. But since then we know that the narrative that is being pushed, as a matter of fact, the virus, as it's spreading, is also carrying a narrative. We've seen so many elements of this, actually. They are trying to depict, identify, and define issues by very certain terms. As we've seen, colors. Black is white, white is black, but certainly corruption, obviously, is not corruption.
We
can all go on with these examples, please.
They call corruption democracy.
That's right. But, you know, my podcast, we started my podcast, actually, with that intention that instead of having those filters, actually, which obviously these poisonous virus-spreading media is using, to get rid of it and to talk basically face-to-face to the people. This is the effort, actually, I believe you are working on. We have a proverb, or rather the slogan for the bold truth, which I believe the Hungarian politicians, including the Prime Minister, has been sticking to, and that is, we always mean what we say, and they always say what we mean. And this is one key element, actually, when trying to formulate anti-virus and anti-narrative of our own, and that is a conservative one.
Oh, what they're attempting to do through wokeness, and when I call it a reformation of reality, it is a new type of revolution, and it is a revolution where they are seeking to redistribute capital. Redistribution of capital. Where have we heard that phrase before? Where have we all heard that phrase before? But in this case, it is not necessarily the redistribution of financial capital. To be sure, there is a financial element to it. But what they truly seek to redistribute is the redistribution of social and political capital. They seek to redistribute social status, social station, social truths in these ideas that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. They will believe that if you do not have the correct percentage of diversity in your organization, in your club, in your movie, in your TV show, then you have fallen afoul of this unwritten rule. They'll never tell you what the correct percentage of diversity is, but you must attain it, or else you will fall afoul of these commissions and bureaus and entities which enforce these unwritten new laws. And what they've done is they've sought to impose a new form of law that is unwritten, it is undiscussed, it is unconstituted, and they are trying to use this to warp all of reality into their twisted version of how things should truly be. And essentially it comes down to this. And I mentioned before about how the redistribution of capital is something that is a Marxist belief. What we are seeing is a form of neo-Marxism because it seeks to redistribute cultural capital. What they are attempting to do is to punish you for being successful. They are trying to punish you for seeking excellence. They are trying to punish you because your ancestors built glorious cities like this one here in Budapest, because your ancestors built the systems of law and justice and order that have contributed so much to the development of our societies, to the development of our way of life for so many years. They seek to subvert all of it because in their view, the existing social order itself is the enemy. That is what they are trying to destroy. They are trying to upend all of society in order to achieve their ends. Their ends, of course, which will never be seen. This is why last year when I attended Davos, Klaus Schwab had his World Economic Forum police came and detained me, detained my film crew, came after us, tried to take our passports, tried to take our cameras, tried to take our footage. We refused, and we were eventually let go. They will do anything they can, whether it be the Commission, the World Economic Forum, WHO, these various institutions, they're all seeking the same thing at the end. It is a redistribution of political and social capital because at the end of the day, they do not want you to attain and achieve your own individual freedom. They do not want you to have the nuclear family anymore. This is a huge part of it, even when we know the attack on the nuclear family is so important because the nuclear family is the oldest institution on planet Earth itself. We know that the nuclear family has existed for 100,000 years. We have archaeological evidence. Father, mother, children. This is the oldest institution. It predates Christianity. It predates, as far as we know, religion itself. Because they are seeking to upend this, they are seeking to upend reality and truth itself.
Many are puzzled. Many are puzzled by the fact, as they say, an unexpected help of narrative came from an unexpected place, they claim, I mean the liberal side, during the 3-day visit of Pope Francis here in Hungary. Because very obviously he's been talking about, he has given 6 speeches, one of the most important one actually in the Carmelita, which is an old religious place actually in the castle. He was talking about the traditional family, he was talking about the traditional values and all those very natural elements of our human existence, including differences in attitude, in personality, in opinion, and so on, which they try to get rid of. And I believe if you wanted to have a strong supporting narrative coming from very obviously a religious, but not rule of law, but rule of nature, law of nature perspective, you should listen and you should read the Pope's speech. Do you think, how can we develop the effort actually of this currency war, in which narrative is a very heavy element in the currency?
Well, everything that we are seeing right now is a function of information warfare. This is, in the West, this is the new form of warfare that we are seeing, not on the battlefield of streets and farms and villages, but in a battlefield that is being waged every single day on little pieces of glass that we carry in our pockets and hold in our hands. That is where the information war is being fought. And the only thing that we can do is fight back with truth. We must fight back with truth. We cannot agree to any of the precepts that they push on us every single day, because when we do, that allows this virus to infect more people as a contagion, to affect more minds, and especially to affect more children. That is also why when we have opportunities like with, I mentioned before, Elon Musk, what he's done with Twitter, I think is fantastic. I think it's a huge milestone in this fight because he has given us the ability to speak back. When I talk to, in the United States, so conservatives have just retaken the U.S. Congress, and when I talk to the advisors there and they say, well, what is, Jack, what is your most important thing? What do you think is the most important thing we should focus on, coming out of into the Congress? And I say, the very first thing must be the freedom of speech, especially the effective use of the freedom of speech, and this is through the internet. Which is the new digital public square. Because if we do not have that, the ability to speak freely, then our tongues will be effectively cut out. We will not be able to have an opportunity to share these ideas, and that is all that I want. Give me a microphone, give me a place where that I can speak, and I will do the rest by myself because I know that I have truth on my side, because I am speaking the words that were taught from thousands of years. I did not come up with these ideas myself. I am not the originator of any of this thought. These are traditional values that have been handed down to us. They are the values that built our societies. These are the values that we stand for. When the other side, they say that tolerance is the highest virtue, tolerance. Tolerance is not a Christian virtue. Tolerance was never a Christian virtue. You can read the Bible cover to cover. You will not find this phrase, tolerance is a virtue. It is not, because tolerance of evil is not a virtue. And in the United States, just a few weeks ago, this situation got so bad that one of these individuals who had been infected and so twisted in her mind that she had gone full into this transition phase. A young girl tried to transition herself to a man. She decided that the reason that she felt so angry was traditional values, was Christianity, was her own Christian upbringing. And in response to this, her anger was turned out and weaponized in a day that the far left referred to as the Transgender Day of Vengeance. And she went to a Christian school, a school full of children from up to less than 12 years old. And she brought a gun and she began killing Christian children in that school as a response to this insanity, which I believe was pushed on her by this virus. The pharmaceuticals, the surgeries, we've seen the horrific effects of this, the suicides. I've talked to detransitioners as well. They describe it as a cult mentality, which is similar to the virus that the Prime Minister spoke about today. Where that happened in the United States was Nashville, Tennessee, a city in what would be considered a rural part of the United States. That's America's interior, the heartland, a conservative area. If it can happen there, this can happen anywhere.
This year's slogan for CPAC Hungary is United We Stand. And we have understood from the previous contributions that very obviously politically there are more elements and more issues that unite us than the ones actually that separate, even amongst conservatives. But we also know that apart from organizing ourselves politically between political forces, governments, ex-government people, it's a daily job, actually. What you were talking about previously, and what I do on a daily basis, is a daily job. And that is day by day, week by week, and month by month, you have to come back to those lies, to the distortions and the misdefinitions, because if you don't do that, then again, in the narrative struggle, you're going to lose.
That's exactly right. And when and my wife, who's sitting right here, will tell you it is absolutely a daily job and you must always work, but you have to also find time for family, you must find time for balance, you must be living out the words that you speak, and we do that every day. Because I said before that my family comes from Poland. If you look at the history there, for 150 of the last 200 years, Poland did not have self-freedom. It was either partitioned, occupied, invaded. For only 50 out of the last 200 years, Poland has had true independent freedom. So the question is, what can we learn from this? How was Poland able to maintain its sovereignty, how to maintain its people in the face of all of this? They focused on three things: language, culture, and religion. And if you focus on language, culture, and religion, then you can survive anything. And that is why it is so important for people who believe in those ideals, even if we don't speak the same language, even if we don't always share the exact same ideals, we do all have the same values. And that's why organizations like this, like CPAC Budapest, CPAC Hungary, all of the CPACs around the world that are going on now, conservatives uniting across the globe, standing hand in hand, can do so because I was in Mexico, I gave the same speech. I was in, we're going to Japan, we're going to give the same speech. I've been all over the world, we give the same speech. Why? Because we are facing the exact same situation everywhere. And regardless of what your background is, your national origin is, we must all stand together against it. I agree with Prime Minister Orban. I applaud him for his career and for the work that he's put forward. And I do believe that it's a challenge that he has also put forward. Will we all unite and build this counter-revolution, if you call it, in an international coalition?
Well, by profession, I'm a historian, and we all remember the original meaning of revolution, and that is returning to the roots, returning to the origin. And indeed, this is what we face as a challenge, both in terms of big politics and, as we agreed, on a daily basis. We are running up on time, so I believe it's going to provide us ample opportunity for the future to discuss, to talk. And I wish that as this cooperation continues and starts among political decision makers, also on our levels, and that is trying to re-influence, reignite public opinion and the people actually to think in a normal, down-to-earth, pragmatic manner about issues around us, is going to help politicians actually to achieve the big goals.
I agree, and as I've said before, it's an honor to be here again speaking in Budapest. Remember, folks, if I can leave you with one thing, God will prevail in the end. The orders of importance: God, family, country.
Mr. Posobiec, thank you for the discussion.
Thank you.